Hey everyone, Nubkeks here. In today's video, it's a bit of a different one. I'm going to be giving my feedback on the role rework that we saw announced at BlizzCon this year. Now this is a formal submission by Sir Nubkeks Esquire, the mother of dragons, first of his name, long live the king. I kind of made like a PowerPoint type presentation. I thought it might be a nice way to present the video. Let me know what you think about it, but it was a little bit formal, so I kind of had to throw a couple of jokes in just to take the piss out of myself a little bit. But anyway, why am I doing this video? Well, first of all, it's been a week since BlizzCon. I wanted to give my thoughts after having a week to think about it. I obviously gave my first impressions, my initial reactions, and my initial opinions, but there's almost 150,000 views on the video I did and over 900 comments. I read most, if not all, of those comments and took all the feedback from that. So yeah, I wanted to give my updated thoughts having read that. People really care about this topic. It's by far the most viewed video I did from BlizzCon. By far the most comments. Probably the most comments I've ever gotten in a video ever. I meant to check before doing this and I forgot. But yeah, people have a lot of opinions and very strong feelings about it. So it's a topic that is clearly worth talking about. I also want to say that we're lucky to have a fantastic dev team, and the dev team deserves good feedback. It's just outside of Heroes of the Storm, this is something that's been frustrating me, certainly with Diablo from BlizzCon, but then also from, World of Warcraft in the last couple of months. If you guys have been following that, I think just it's hard to find good feedback, and I wanted to, kind of show some appreciation for the Heroes team by giving some good feedback, and hopefully kind of maybe inspire people to give more good feedback as well, rather than bad feedback. Nobody wants bad feedback. All right, the goals of this rework. What are the goals, just before we dive into looking at the actual heroes and roles? Why are we doing this in the first place? So I would say that the 6 new roles which we've got tanks, bruisers, healers, supports, melee assassins, and ranged assassins. I think that's a really good starting point, actually. Updates were really badly needed. Previously, the warrior role, for example, contained heroes like, let's say, Johanna, who is a very tanky, a main tank type character. Fits in the tank role as it is now. This survivable frontline for the team, setting up their team with crowd control. It also had heroes like Sonya in there, who are all about kind of doing damage. They're survivable on the front line, but they don't really set up their team. And they're more focused on solo laning. And then also had a hero in there like Zarya, who, well, they're not very good at solo laning. They also don't really set up their team all that well. So where does Zarya even fit in? She's now in the support role, which is more about, giving shielding, doing some damage, kind of helping out, bringing utility with the heroic stuff. So yeah, I mean, there were just heroes that didn't really fit in where they were anymore. So that's important. So I think it's very important for the role system, and I've changed my mind on some of these points because of this, that they're friendly for new players. I mean, this is one of the starting things that a new player sees when they boot up the game. What did they think when they see these roles for heroes? It should also be useful for everybody. It's not just for new players, but it's for everyone. I think it's very important that you have clear sorting for heroes by gameplay, which is what I think we have mostly achieved here. But again, I'll give some feedback on that. And also, I think it's very important that we have a strong theme for sense of character. Like, this also very much ties into new players, but when a new player comes to the game and they go, I want to play this sort of hero, coming from other role-playing type games, coming from Dungeons and Dragons or MMOs like World of Warcraft, what have you, going, I want to be this sort of guy. So I think, for example, the healer role is one that Blizzard has done an amazing job with in the last year. We've had just great heroes released for healers. We've had amazing reworks for healers. I think that healers are overall in an amazing spot right now, probably the best spot out of all the roles in the game. In my opinion, and I think there's a really strong theme for that role as well now, so that when you pick a healer in the game or you look at the healer role, this new healer role, you go, oh yeah, looking at all these characters, I know exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to be backing up my team. I'm going to be topping up health bars. Like, I'm that MVP backline guy. I'm not really attacking too much, but I'm all about, keeping my team alive. That's a strong role, goes through, like I said, D&D, WoW, all that sort of stuff. Healing, it's a common thing. People understand what it is, and you get to play those sort of characters when you pick that role in HOTS. I think that's good. Also, I want to note, I'm slightly in the way here, but it doesn't really matter. We haven't seen Blizzard's confirmed work in progress tag system yet. So I talked about this in my initial reactions. I'd like to see a tag system on top of the role system, which would identify specific hero strengths like, okay, wave clear, burst damage, mobility, that sort of thing. We don't know what those tags are going to be, though. Blizzard has talked about that. They confirmed in the AMA, that was just on a couple of days ago. I did a video on that too. They confirmed that they are going to have a tag system and that the tag system is meant to interact with the role system. We haven't seen that, so giving this feedback, having not seen that. The tag system may change how we view things. It's hard to say. We can't say for sure. All right. What are the concerns so far? What were the things that people were worried about in the comments? There are three main concerns. Number one is that heroes don't fit the new role system, that they just stand out. You go, wait, why is X hero in role number Y? I've got some examples coming up now. Two, the loss of the specialist role. A lot of people kind of upset by that. And then three, too many heroes are in the ranged assassin role in particular. So here are some comments that we can see. Let me get me out of the way here for a second. But yeah, Javier, I don't know. I'm going to pronounce all these names wrong. Apologies in advance. But yeah, it's one of the top voted comments, all of these top voted comments. But murky assassin, does that fit? The best assassin, Rodrigo says. Sir Rorschach saying he should be support. He lanes and he camps. Feta Master 15, RIP, the specialist class. Phi9E saying IMO, they need to split mages from auto attack heroes like Raynor, make a separate role for them. And then I thought, Daniel kind of sums this up in a little bit more detail. I really like this comment too. He said, yep, the biggest criticism towards the roles was the overwhelming number of assassins and the intra-group variety within. And they basically did nothing with that. Melee and ranged classifications were always around. It doesn't seem to address the core problem at all. All right, so here we go. This is bada bang. I'm back for a little bit. This is the role system. In fact, no, I'm gonna go. I'm gone. See ya. It's been fun, but no. So you can see these heroes down here. These are the 6 roles that and the heroes within them that we saw announced at BlizzCon. What I've put in here, I've put some markers in. I'm going to break these down now, but I just marked off. I went through this and I marked off a few of the heroes or things up here that are a little bit concerning to me. Let's go break them down in a bit more detail here. This is a bit of an info dump, but I just want to get this video out there. I'll break it all down, but here we go. These are some of my points. All right, let's go through them one by one just so we can explain them clearly. So my first concern, and really my only concern with the tank role, is with Tyrael. My concern with Tyrael is he has a lack of CC. Right, so compare Nubkeks, multiple stuns, Muradin stuns, Stitch's hook, Arthas's powerful roots. We've stuns here, stuns, displacement stuns, and then you've got Tyrael, who doesn't have any of that. So for me, he kind of stands out as being like this kind of wonky hero in the tank role. Yes, he is survivable, but he shields his team. He gives them some movement speed. He can slow down the enemy team and body block them, sure. But he seems a little bit out of place, in my opinion, in the tank role. So perhaps he might be more of a bruiser, but is he a good solo laner? I don't really feel that he is. It's too mana intensive. His wave clear is not good enough. Potentially, he could either as well go to the support role and be this sort of supportive tank. Maybe emphasize that a little bit more. I'm not entirely sure. Let me know what you think down below. But yeah, I just noted, I said, hey, looking at these overall, yes, you can run Tyrael as a tank, but when you do run him as that main tank kind of role, he does feel very different, and only in very specific type of compositions. It seems a bit odd that he is in that tank role. Jumping over to the bruiser then. So D.Va, for me, the idea of bruisers that Blizzard has identified, they want them to be these tanky, survivable frontline characters who are also very good at solo laning. And typically that means having stronger wave clear at the cost of either some CC or some survivability relative to tanks. That's what the bruiser role is supposed to be. Now, looking at D.Va, she's a bit of a weak laner. Her wave clear is not that good. Her self-sustain is kind of questionable. I mean, her mech dies, she can rebuild the mech, but you give away some XP and all that. In my opinion, this may be more of a balance issue. They've talked about maybe looking at D.Va, bringing in the micro missiles ability that she has in Overwatch, perhaps as part of her kit. So that's something to look at. I think that, like I said, I feel it's a balance issue more so. I feel like at the core, her kit could easily be tweaked without any major changes into fitting into bruisers. But yeah, some concerns about D.Va. Next up, we got Varian. Some definite concerns about Varian for me too. He is a fairly weak laner for a hero that's supposed to be a bruiser. unfortunately, the PowerPoint thingy is in the way. There we go. But yeah, the question I have here is, what is Varian's identity post multi-class? Blizzard have decided, and I think it is the right choice, not to multi-class heroes, at least initially in this role system. Perhaps we could identify some multi-class type things, heroes that can cross over between multiple roles, more so with tags. So perhaps, where is he? Greymane. Let's say Greymane down here. Obviously, you know, probably fits most appropriately into the ranged assassin role, but you could spec him out with talents to be more focused on being a melee hero. So perhaps you could identify that with tags. With Varian though, what is the deal with Varian? What are we going to see with him? I just have some questions about that. And then next up, Malthael as well. I had a lot of people have concerns about basically all of the non-warrior heroes that were moved into Bruiser, that being Thrall, Zul, Malthael, and Ragnaros. Everyone had concerns about this. I'm actually pretty fine with Thrall, Zul, and Ragnaros. I feel that's pretty appropriate. They all are relatively survivable frontline heroes that tend to mostly stick with their team when they're engaging. They also have great wave, some have great wave clear. Thrall's wave clear is not the best, but they are all good solo laners, that sort of thing. Strong laning presence. They tend to be with their team during the team fight. So I do feel that overall they do fit the Bruiser. Malthael though, some concerns on that, in that he feels very much more like an assassin when you take the Last Rites heroic. I think this is a fairly big concern, is that, okay, I think it's Tormented Souls is the name. I can't remember actually what the name, I think it's Tormented Souls is his second heroic, which basically starts applying your Reaper's Mark in an AoE, which lets you proc more healing and all that. Now, since the last time they did a rework on Malthael and they made his basic attacks cleave, it's really, and they nerfed, you know, Tormented Souls used to be the go-to, they've nerfed it a lot. Tormented Souls is now feels very underwhelming. It's barely ever picked. I feel like with Tormented Souls, he would feel like more of a bruiser. Like, okay, I'm going to go in with my team. I'm going to dive the enemy team, disrupt them, and I'm going to tank lots of damage. I'm going to heal lots of damage. But that heroic is so bad compared to Last Rites. Last Rites is basically always picked. And with Last Rites, you feel a lot more like an assassin. It's like, I'm looking for that low health hero, or, you know, a medium health hero to focus down and then blow them up individually with Last Rites. You don't really feel too much like you are a frontline for your team. You feel much more like an assassin. So I do have a concern over that one. Jumping over to healers, like I said before, I think that the healer role is probably the best one overall in terms of how people fit into it. The tank role is also pretty good too, I will say. But the healer role is pretty good. One exception to that for me is Kerosene. And the concern I have with Kerosene is that his healing is very talent dependent. I mean, you could go into like Iron Fists, Seven-Sided Strike, you could just spec all into damage with Kerosene and bring almost no healing whatsoever to your team. So certainly, let's say in Quick Match where you get a random healer on your team, if you get Kerosene, compared to any of these other healers, like Stukov, no matter what, is always going to do good healing. Even Tyrande now, after her rework, even if she specs into Starfall and damage, she still is going to have good healing, and she still has some talents that no matter what she chooses, improve her healing. Every hero here does really good healing, unless you get Kerosene when he specs all damage, and then suddenly you have almost no healing at all. So the question I have with Kerosene is, what are we going to see happen with him? Because I do really like the variety of Iron Fists, Insight, or Transcendence, those level 1 talents that give you either damage with Iron Fists, cooldown reduction and mana back with Insight, or healing with Transcendence based off your basic attacks. I think that's really cool. What do we do with him? What I'm wondering is perhaps we might want to move Kerosene over to the support role more so, maybe even remove the healing from his W ability, add some sort of support aspect to it, maybe crank his damage up a little bit, maybe emphasize the movement speed, or perhaps give him, you know, block stacks, or have the W apply a shield, which would fit with the theme of support much better. Emphasize some of his damage things and kind of treat him as a support hero who kind of has a lot of similarities to melee assassins, let's say, as opposed to being just a pure healer. That might preserve more of that fantasy of the monk better than moving him into pure healer, because he is a little bit wonky. So yeah, Kerosene, question mark. Looking at the supports then, I think the one that stands out here is definitely the Lost Vikings. Support is basically all about bringing utility to your team, typically through shielding. All of these heroes give shields, basically. You know, perhaps vision is a big thing as well. You know, decent damage output is good too. Maybe utility, you know, like portals, force walls, Zarya's heroics, expulsion zone, what have you. The only utility that the Lost Vikings really bring, though, is Soak. And they're a very weird hero. So it's kind of hard to know where to put them in, to be honest with you, because they're so unusual. I kind of suspect perhaps Bruiser might fit better, seeing as they are, you know, those kind of solo lane focused hero. That's kind of where you put them in the team more so. It's like, okay, these are our dedicated sort of laner guys. And then when they come into the team fight, I mean, they do have pretty big combined HP pool when you put it together. They kind of function a little bit like a Bruiser. It's hard to say. They don't really fit perfectly anywhere, but they do stand out a little bit as support. It feels a little bit weird compared to the variety of utility that the others in the support role kind of bring. So maybe Bruiser fit better. Now over here, this is where things get very interesting. This is where things get very interesting. So before I give feedback on the idea that there's too many heroes and ranged assassins, let's just talk about it. Let's go with this. Let's assume that the roles are staying as is. So let's talk about how heroes fit in them and the naming. Let's talk about naming first. So number one, I think melee assassin, ranged assassin, I think there's a bunch of problems with that. I think the idea of an assassin as a theme is a very specific theme. You know, it's the sneaky stabby guy. You know, he's, you know, backstabbing, he's stealthy, he uses poison, or, you know, a sniper rifle or something like that. It's a very specific theme. It's kind of weird to have heroes like Falstad in Assassin. I mean, he's a giant guy throwing hammers on a giant chicken. Giant bird, you get the idea. Giant griffin. So, you know, not exactly what one would think of typically as an assassin. I feel like the assassin is kind of, it's a relic from back in the original role system, where assassins were heroes that did damage to other heroes, and specialists were heroes that did damage to structures. So I'd kind of like to ditch that role, ditch that name, to be honest with you. I think that, you know, melee assassin, we could just leave that as assassin. I think that typically assassin describes these guys pretty well. You can see I have a couple of exceptions here. Then what do we do with the ranged assassin role? What do we rename it? It's kind of hard to think of one. Some suggestions I saw in the comments were calling them strikers, perhaps blasters. There's so much variety within this role. It's hard to come up with a name that doesn't sound dumb, that fits them all. I would say that calling these all assassins probably sounds pretty dumb too. We're just used to it. So yeah, I don't know what to think about that, but I do have some suggestions if we split these into more on that later though. First of all, let's take a look here at a couple of these last exceptions here. So number one, Gazlo is a melee assassin. He really doesn't feel like much of a melee assassin. He's much more about zoning, kind of controlling zones, setting up turrets. He's got, you know, these area bombs that stun, that sort of thing, Gravo Bomb. I mean, yes, he does a lot of physical damage with Robo Goblin, but he doesn't really feel assassin-like. Certainly not in the way that Zeratul feels assassin-like, or Valera, for example. Also, he does tend to do very well in those solo lanes, so I think that perhaps moving Gazlo into the Bruiser role, I mean, like, yes, he's fairly squishy for a Bruiser, but he's about control with turrets, sort of similar, let's say, to Rexar, you know, kind of squishy, but he brings that sort of Bruiser role through Misha. Gazlo, perhaps the same thing with turrets. I think he might fit better there. Illidan, I have another question mark about. These assassins typically fit very well in the 4-man team, I would say. You know, they're the damage dealer in the 4-man team, whereas the Bruiser is more of the damage dealer in the solo lane. Now, Illidan is terrible in the 4-man team. He's really not good at that. He's usually run as a solo laner, or he spends a lot of time jungling, that is, you know, doing merc camps for his team. His damage also isn't all that high, you know, compared to other heroes, you know, like Kerrigan, serious kill threat. I mean, Zeratul, again, serious kill threat. Then you've got Illidan, like, yes, he does high sustain damage, but it's not really that bursty or scary. I don't know. Maybe he'd fit better as a Bruiser? Is that really the theme we want for Illidan, for a Demon Hunter from, you know, Warcraft 3? I don't know about that. I basically just want to raise a question mark, and I'm curious to see your feedback as what you think Illidan should be in the game. Do we want to push him more towards Assassin, or should he be more of a Bruiser? What fits best? And then finally, Murky. This is another one people had a lot of issues with, as being a melee assassin. I mean, Murky has a big focus on laning, on doing mercenaries, on soaking, kind of being this pain in the ass. He fit very well into the old specialist role. I think you could arguably put him in the Bruiser role. Now, there's obviously some concerns with that, in that Murky's got, I think, the smallest health bar out of anyone in the game. Certainly later in the game with Regenerative Bubble, if you ever get level 20 and he gets whatever it is where he gets way more health. He does become very tanky. It's kind of tricky to fit him in. In terms of team fights, Murky does fit in as an assassin in terms of team fights, usually, because typically with Murky, you're going to go for a flank, because it's kind of low risk. If you die, no big deal. Kind of flank in, either set up a good March of the Murlocs from a flank, or go in and octo grab someone. Both of those things are pretty assassin-y, to be honest, that sort of flanking feel to it. But in terms of how he plays the map, he really doesn't feel like much of an assassin. Feels more like a bruiser. He's kind of weird. So yeah, just where does he fit in? Hard to say for sure. Now, let's talk about this though. Let's talk about how damage dealers should be split up. So there's a few options here, right? There's a few options. Melee versus ranged. Do we need to split up damage dealers along the lines of melee versus ranged? Or could a tag system cover this? For example, and this is one of the things that kind of pushes me towards saying, you know what, maybe we shouldn't split them up, melee assassin, ranged assassin, but rather use tags, because look at supports, for example, look at healers, look at even the tanks and bruisers. Within those roles, there are also melee and ranged, like Uther is a melee healer, right? Whereas Alex Straza is a ranged healer. And that does have some gameplay impact as well. That can be an important decision to take. So we're going to need tags for melee and ranged for, let's say, healers, very obviously. So perhaps we could do the same with damage dealers. Burst versus sustain, should we split them up by that? What about abilities versus basic attacks? Is that important? I mean, let's say if you look at a different MOBA like League of Legends, it's very important because you can either build items that boost ability damage or boost basic attack damage. You can also get armor for either abilities or basic attack damage. We have some of that with armor in Heroes of the Storm, but is it important enough to split people up by that? I think the goal here is we want to make the roles more intelligible, not just one giant clump. I'm specifically talking about the damage dealing roles here. Make them more intelligible, not just one giant clump, where you have all of these heroes that function actually very, very differently. But they're all in this one, like a new, imagine it being a new player and looking at the ranged assassins, and you've got like a ton of heroes just in this big clump. And you go, oh, if I like this ranged assassin, I like this one. Hey, if I like Zul'jin, am I gonna like Probius? And then you find out that no, they're actually totally, completely different. I think this is important too in terms of theme, right? The importance of theme. Ask a Warcraft fan to name an assassin. Would they say Jaina? Would they say Jaina? A Warcraft fan might go, okay, so from World of Warcraft, might be like maybe Edwin or Vanessa Van Cleef or Matthias Shaw. If Valera might jump to mind too, especially if you did the Rogue, Order Hall, and Legion. You'd be like, okay, Valera, oh yeah, sure. Would they say Jaina though? Or Prince Kael'thas as an assassin? Just put aside your HOTS knowledge for a second. Assassin? No, that seems weird. Jaina? No, she's a mage, right? In World of Warcraft. Coming from Warcraft 3, if you're one of the RTS fans, and Warcraft 3 Reforged coming out, you said, tell me an assassin. You might go, well, the Orc Blade Master? You go, yeah, Samuro, there you go. Maybe, the Night Elf Warden. Maiev, yes, there you go, cool, they're assassin-y too. Again, they'd probably be kind of perplexed if you said, well, actually, the Archmage Jaina is an assassin. They kind of go, oh, not really, it kind of sounds a bit weird. They're not an agility-based hero. Ask a StarCraft fan to name an assassin. Would they say a Protoss Probe? No, probably not. They were like, well, Dark Templar. Dark Templar's a good one. Protoss Probe? That's a bit weird. A probe as an assassin? Just from these guys coming from other games, it just seems a bit odd. So I think it's an important goal here as well to have make sure that roles have a strong theme. And so here I go. I'm going to put up these one by one and then I'll break it down. I split them up into 4 roles and I'll talk about why and as we go. But I think the first role is an assassin role. It's what I would have. I like the idea of the assassin. It's all about assassinating vulnerable heroes. That's the core of the kit. It's all about going, yes, there's a squishy, there's a vulnerable. I want to go in, I want to kill them, I want to blow them up. So Alarak, Genji, Kerrigan, Maiev, Samuro, Tracer, The Butcher, Valera, Zeratul, Nova. Flanking can be a big deal, or diving. So, like Genji, going in, diving that backline with his mobility. Maiev kind of looking for that flanker that engage, pulling people in. Samuro perhaps stealthing in behind and then, chopping dudes up while his illusions distract. That sort of thing, right? Single target damage, typically a big part of their kit, a very, very, very high impact in their kit. And crucially, I think it could be ranged or melee. So, Nova is ranged. Genji's ranged, technically. But then you also have heroes like, the Butcher or Valera or Zeratul who are melee. I think these all fit in there pretty well. Also, so you can give feedback on this because some heroes may or may not fit. I'm going to do the exact same treatment that I gave to Blizzard's system as I will give to this. I'll point out what I think are some flaws with this system, but as a starting point, I'm putting this forwards. I think then also a marksman role. So have this one, get away there, PowerPoint thing. Ranged basic attacks are core to this kit. All of these heroes usually have talents that build into their ranged basic attacks, or their ranged basic attack. It's not something that you can ignore and be successful with. Weaponry is also a big theme, I think, of these heroes. So they use guns, they use bows, pew, pew, pew. It's all about shooting people typically with things. So, Hanzo with his bow, Raynor with his gun, Tychus with his minigun, Lunara throwing spears to apply her poison, that sort of stuff. I think basic attacks are all a big part of these guys, and they're all ranged heroes. Then we've got the mage role. So with this one, spells are the core to their kit. I didn't call out all the heroes, but in mage, sorry, I forgot with the marksman, but mage, Azmodan, Chromie, Gul'dan, Jaina, Kel'Thuzad, Gall, Li Ming, Mephisto, Orphea, Nazeebo, Probius, and Zagara. So it's all about casting spells. And now, of course, let's say Orphea with her spells, she does get, she does use basic attacks, but that's through a spell, essentially the chaos stuff that she gets. Chromie, also same thing with Bronze Talons. Again, it's kind of the spell-focused basic attack. Azmodan with Wrath. I mean, compare these to the marksmen, who all typically have, bows or guns. A lot of these have nothing in their hands at all. Maybe a staff with Jaina, or like a little wand with Li Ming. But Nazeebo has this little fetish type thingy. But like Azmodan has just got his hands out. Chromie just hands. Gul'dan just hands. Kael'thas. A lot of these guys, they don't have any physical weapons. It's all about the spells that they're casting. I've got Zagara and Probius in there as well, because they are the spell casting heroes. AoE damage is typically a big feature of mages as well. And in this case, actually, interesting enough, all of these heroes are ranged. But I do have the question, could a melee be a mage? Perhaps. Or would they be forced more into the assassin role? We'll talk about Alarak in maybe a second in terms of how he might fit into that. But yeah, that is mages. And then these are the bruisers moving from assassins, which I do think fit in here probably. Some of them may be a little bit clunky to fit in. I'll point out some of those flaws. I've already pointed out some. But yeah, typically these are solo laners, and they're typically kind of on the front line, being a bit disruptive. So we got Ragnaros, Cho. I put Cho in here. Obviously he's not from Assassin, but seeing as I had Gall, might as well put in Cho. Gazlo, Malthael, Zul, the Lost Vikings, Varian, Thrall, Illidan, and Murky. So yeah, we'll come back to some problems here, because this is probably the most contentious one right here. But yeah, I think all these heroes, they tend to be on the front line. They've got self-healing, like these guys, and Varian, or, they got Zul has his shield to keep him alive. Illidan is that self-healing, or Gazlo with this sort of zone control. Yeah, that sort of stuff. So here we go. This is an overview of all of the different roles and the heroes in them and how they fit in. Just to cover the marksmen, because I didn't cover that properly, just to be for completion's sake. Cassia, Falstad, Phoenix, Hanzo, Greymane, Junkrat, Lunara, Raynor, Sergeant Hammer, Sylvanas, Tychus, Vala, and Zul Jin. Let's point out some of the problems here. So these are, I'm just highlighting some of the heroes that may be problematic. We'll go through this as quick as we can. So for example, in the Assassins, we got Alarak. Deadly Charge is a very assassin-like ability, and that was one of my main reasons for putting him in here. It's all about, diving in to blow up some person with your combo. If he has Counter-Strike, though, is he more of a mage? Because Deadly Charge is typically not picked very often, often just left to level 20. So, he's picked with Counter-Strike so often. And in that situation, he's not really flanking, or he's not really diving. He's much more sticking with the team and kind of comboing with the team, much more so like a mage. So question mark on Alarak. Could be cool as well to have a melee mage. I don't know. I mean, Samuro is an interesting one in terms of like, could he be this is just a good example, I think, of a hero who could have a sub-role, perhaps through a tag, where I do think that in terms of team fighting, stealthing in that strong single target focus with your basic attacks, it's very assassin-like. But he also is a very strong solo laner, like bruisers are. So yeah, Samuro, perhaps that could be a sub-role type thing. Going over to the marksman, I mean, Falstad, I point out, his talents for his basic attack, kind of underwhelming. A lot of his talents do build into that spell-based stuff. So is he more of a mage, with his Hammerangs and his Hinterland Blast? I don't know, maybe. Junkrat is an interesting one here too, in terms of, unlike the other heroes who do tend to have quite a lot of basic attack talents, Junkrat, maybe more so than any of them, does focus on those spells. So perhaps he could be a mage. That being said, he does have a gun and the basic attack isn't terrible. but that's, you know, maybe a little bit of a question mark. And then Sylvanas, of course, the rework on Sylvanas is still pending. So they've said that they want her to be very much more an assassin in terms of, you know, the new ranged assassin that they're talking about. We'll see, though, where she ends up. Jumping then to the Bruisers, you can see I have a lot of problems here. But yeah, the Lost Vikings, you know, 3 heroes in 1. They do have that big combined health pool, but it's kind of hard to define exactly what they do. I feel like the Bruisers being the laners, the solo laners, I think that is what the Vikings do. So I feel like that's where they fit in the best. Myself, I think that's the clearest, but it is a little bit tricky. I mean, perhaps we could even bring Specialist back as a role for Vikings, Murky, maybe Gazlo, but is that too small of a role? Is there much point in that? Or can we just split them up? Like Probius honestly works as a mage. He doesn't need to be another role. So is there a point in a specialist role? Can they fit in well enough into Bruisers, the Lost Vikings, to make them fit? Illidan, what is Illidan's hero identity? Oh, I covered this. You know, does he do merc camps? Is he a soul laner? Does he do enough damage to be, you know, an assassin? Like, does he fit in as a Bruiser? Is that the fantasy of being a demon hunter? Or should they be more agile and damage based? It's a question. That's a big question. And I don't know which way Blizzard might go on this one. You know, like Demon Hunters and WoW have both the tank spec and the damage spec. Who knows? Illidan probably leans more towards damage, but we'll see. And gameplay, maybe not so much. Gazlo. Gazlo's very squishy himself, but the turrets provide a lot of bruiser type things, and he does solo lane, so I think he fits in better there than as an assassin overall. Malthael, again, I mentioned this already, but the heroic choice kind of feels like it leans him either towards being more of an assassin or towards being more of a bruiser. Then Murky, of course, too, finally. He's an extremely squishy hero. Does he really fit in as a bruiser? Well, he does do the laning stuff. So yeah, just some questions there, kind of repeating some of that. But yeah, I'm curious to know what your feedback is, because that is my feedback in terms of the role rework and kind of what I think. So yeah, they're my suggestions, right? My suggestions is to have something like this. Instead of having, we'll pop back real fast. Instead of having our damage dealers, I really like what they've done with tank, bruiser, healer, and support. Again, like I said, already raised up some problems in terms of the ones that they already have here. And then, like I said, looking at the melee and the ranged assassin, okay, if we're sticking with these, I really would like the names to be changed to make them stand out a bit more. Like I said, ask a Warcraft fan to name an assassin. They're never going to say Jaina, right? They'd be like, Jaina's a mage, of course. That's the class that she would be in WoW. So just making that stuff a bit more clear. So if they stick with this, like I said, perhaps Striker or Blaster, what name could you have for them? And then, yeah, again, if we are to split the roles, I think we should probably split the ranged assassin role. I do think that there are too many heroes in it. It's too unclear. And this is my suggestion in terms of how they should be split. I think splitting them like this would be a good idea. So not going along the melee and ranged route, but using a tag for that, because we're already going to have tags for melee and ranged. Importantly for roles like healer or even like bruiser with Rexar being ranged, that sort of thing. I think assassins who focus on killing vulnerable heroes, lots of flanking and diving and killing heroes. Mages, who are all about those spell casts, these big flashy spells, typically lots of AoE damage, all of them currently ranged. Marksmen, where their basic attacks are crucially part of their kit. They've got a big focus on that, lots of talents as well, typically that build into them. And then bruisers, who are those, you know, the solo laners. They're a bit more of a front line. They're not as squishy as assassins. They're not flanking as much. They tend to go in more so with their team and be a bit more of a front line, maybe bringing a bit more CC or self-survivability, the bruisers. And like I said, just in case I didn't make it clear, there are other bruisers. These are just the ones that come from assassins. That's my feedback. Let me know what you guys think. I'll see you all next time for more Heroes of the Storm. And also, do let me know what your feedback is on this type of video. Did you like this type of video? Would you like to see more? What could I improve on it? If so, I'll see you all next time, though, guys. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.